Welcome to a ProLife Team Podcast. I am Jacob Barr. I'm here with Tom Glessner, and we're going to talk a little bit about NIFLA versus Becerra today, 3 years after that landmark case. So Tom, tell me, when it comes to NIFLA versus Becerra, tell me what it was like when it comes to that experience. Where did you see God's fingerprints in that time?
Well, firstly, we have to understand what the case was all about to understand, how God was moving. California had passed this law that mandated that pro-life pregnancy centers advertise for abortion with a sign that they're posting in their clinic. And failure to comply with that mandate would have resulted in fines and levies and eventually closing down the pregnancy centers. So law was at stake because the pregnancy centers in California were not going to obey this law. They are pro-life to the hilt. They're not going to advertise for abortion. They're not going to refer for abortion. That goes totally against their foundation and who they are. Okay. The other thing at risk here was this, in a broader perspective. So imagine this. Imagine if the government mandated that Alcoholics Anonymous post a sign in their offices telling their clients where the local liquor store is. Or if the government mandated that the American Cancer Society promotes cigarettes. Absurd, right? Destroying the very foundation and meaning of those organizations. So this is huge. It's a free speech issue, basically, because our First Amendment to the Constitution gives us the right to freely speak, but that right to freely speak also protects us from being mandated to speak a message with which we fundamentally disagree. So that was the background of it. And all the liberal organizations were supporting California. They were they were promoting the lie that pregnancy centers are deceptive and fraudulent and they need to be regulated like this. So it was in that backdrop now that we have our lawsuit. And we file our lawsuit against California, which happened to be in the Ninth Federal Circuit on the West Coast, which is the most liberal and hostile circuit in the whole federal judicial system. So we file our lawsuit in San Diego District Court and we lose, okay? Not unexpected. We then appeal it to the Court of Appeals. And we lose again. We lose twice in the Court of Appeals, okay? Now our only hope is the United States Supreme Court. Now there's no automatic right of appeal here. The United States Supreme Court gets 8,000 appeals a year and they only accept 100 of them. So mathematically, we're not going to make it if you just say mathematically what our chances are. So like 1%, okay? So God's first miracle was that we were accepted by the court. Bingo. 1% chance of getting there, we got there. That's his first miracle. His second miracle, I don't really have time to get into a lot of the details other than to say the way it became orchestrated, because there were other parties involved with different appeals and all. This thing could have been a real zoo at the high court, but the court only accepted NIFLA's appeal. So that made us focus on the issues that we were arguing. So that was I was expecting a lot of groups to be involved. No, it came down on NIFLA, totally on NIFLA. Okay, so from that standpoint, I said, I feel like, we're going to win this thing because God's opened up too many doors that, practically speaking, they shouldn't have been opened. And we're going to win this thing. So I felt really confident going into the day of argument we're going to win the case. So
why was it singled down to just NIFLA?
Well, I think the basic reason is because NIFLA as an organization has our membership is both medical clinics and non-medical clinics. And the law impacted both the medical and the non-medical. The other cases involved only suits on behalf of medical. Nobody was representing the non-medical. So if those cases were accepted and won, we'd still have the issue of could the state do this to the non-medical centers? Well, because NIFLA has both in our organization, they decided we can take care of this issue on both ends by bringing NIFLA in. So I think that was probably the thinking, although you never know.
So when it comes to precedents created by NIFLA versus Becerra, how would you describe the benefit, or how is this precedent from this case, now 3 years has passed, how do you view the precedents of this NIFLA versus Becerra case today?
Well, it's been called by several think tanks in Washington as the most significant free speech decision from the court in our lifetime. And on the day the decision came down, I was sitting in the court, and they announced it was a 5-4 decision. Well, we knew we had won, but of the 5 votes in favor, the court announced that 4 of those justices had signed and filed what's called a concurring opinion. Now that concerned me a little, because the way that works is you have a majority of 5, and that will be the decision as far as the impact of the ruling. But what is the reasoning for the ruling? If a justice that votes with the majority but files a concurring opinion, that means that justice disagrees with the reasoning of the majority, but they still come out with the same result. Now, I was very concerned because I didn't know what that concurring opinion said, and until I saw what it said, I wasn't going to do any somersaults in celebration. I just knew we won, but with a concurring opinion, it could have modified everything that you'd want to have happen. So we came down out of the court, and I was greeted by Kristen Wagner from ADF, who is one of the attorneys on our team, and she had the opinion, and she's smiling, just ear-to-ear smile, and the concurring opinion was not only, supportive of the result, but it went further than what the majority opinion actually had said. So it had a broader impact, and now we've got an opinion that just came down from the United States Supreme Court protecting Catholic social services in Philadelphia from being mandated by the city of Philadelphia that they have to provide foster care, provide same-sex couples the right to be foster parents, which is the Catholic Church is totally opposed to that. So it protects religious freedom big time. So it's a great case. It's a great decision.
So it seems like a pregnancy clinic director could pull encouragement from this, when they're facing overwhelming, a large group going after them, that they could be encouraged by the way God by the way God worked through this scenario and provided safety and blessing to all clinics across the country, both medical and non-medical. How would you speak to encourage them when they're facing their own Goliath and they're in this situation?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. David and Goliath. I mean, pregnancy centers versus the state of California. That's a David and Goliath situation for sure. And remember, we lost all the way up to the Supreme Court. And we had to stay focused and keep our heads on right and keep faith that God's going to get us through. And so, when we lost at the Court of Appeals, we had 2 losses in the Court of Appeals before we went up to the Supreme Court. I had directors from California calling me pretty panic-stricken, and they were saying they have their medical directors who are talking about resigning because they don't think they can stay doing this in light of the law that's been upheld by the Ninth Circuit. And I just had to remain, I believed at that time with all my heart that we were going to win the case. That I believed that my own professional assessment of the makeup of the court, I believed we had at least 5 votes there, but also I just believed God wasn't going to let us down. So I would encourage people when you go through that dark period, you stay focused and you keep your eyes on the Lord and you keep moving ahead, and things turn out okay.
It sounds like you were probably felt somewhat alone during that time. And having Jesus or the Lord there was key, but it felt like you probably felt overwhelmed when it came to the odds of the number of people against.
Well, we had a lot of friends who were supporting us, and so we had a lot of support.
That's good.
And a lot of people said, we're praying for you. And so, I didn't really feel alone. I felt like I'm in this with a lot of people, and we represent a lot of people, and we represent, we're all together in this. And so if the ship goes down, we're all going down together, okay? So, but I didn't believe the ship was going to go down. So, yeah.
How did the people supporting and praying for you, how did they communicate that to you, and how did that encourage you?
Well, we got constant emails. We got letters, phone calls. We had a lot of statewide phone calls of statewide directors of the centers, and we just to fill them in on what's going on and what's coming up, and then we had prayer time on those calls. So we all felt really together on it. We were obviously concerned. We can't lose this case, but there was some confidence in our team. We really felt in the end we're going to be okay.
So when you look back at this time in your life, how do you see it today? How's it, emotionally, spiritually, legally? How do you, what's your current character? How do you currently look at it when it comes to, reflecting back? What's that look like to you?
Well, we're in pretty perilous times today, and the news is difficult to listen to sometimes. And ask yourself a lot of questions. Where is the nation headed? And what's the future for not only the nation, but our families and our children and our grandchildren and personally us? Have a lot of questions. But going through this experience, God is always there, and He'll walk you. God never promises to save you from tribulation or trials. He does promise to walk with you through those tribulations and trials. And that's really the lesson that we have. So
I remember there was a quote you said, I think after the case was won, where you said the enemy was as mad as like they took a beehive and smashed it on the ground. There were hornets.
Oh yeah.
Really mad. And so the enemy was just looking for a way to cause damage, not even really trying to do what would be, quote, logical, but just trying to strike out and cause damage.
They were so furious because they were so arrogant and thought they were going to win. And it was literally like a hornet's nest being dropped from the top of your house and smashing on the sidewalk. And the bees are just flying all around. They're so angry. They were a bunch of angry hornets. That's absolutely true. But none of us got stung. So, So that was it. It was a great victory, and prayer got us through, and staying focused and trusting in God, that gets us through. And that's a message for everybody here, no matter what you're going through. That's the message.
Yeah. It seems like your NIFLA is, part of like the legal team member. If we had a baseball team, you're like if we had a body, you'd be the legal arm.
Okay.
And so I'm imagining NIFLA is so integral to the ProLife team as a nationwide team.
Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of very good legal organizations, Alliance Defending Freedom. We worked with them. They argued the case for us. We helped prepare it for them. We provide a lot of legal help to our network of 1,600 pregnancy centers on just day-to-day operations. And I always tell them, there's one way I can guarantee there's one way to win a lawsuit. Never get sued. You never get sued by doing the right thing, and you just, you work hard, do the right thing, and you'll be okay. So we work hard on behalf of our centers, but there's a lot of really good groups out there. ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, Liberty Counsel, Life Legal out in California, the Pacific Justice Foundation, and Thomas More Society, the Alan Parker, who's standing next to me right now, as I see him at the side of my head. His Justice Foundation is an awesome group that we've signed on an amicus brief with them to challenge the ruling in the Dobbs, or to represent the state of Mississippi as an amici, urging the court to uphold or reinstate the Mississippi law that they're going to be looking at in the very near future. So a lot of good people head here.
So when it comes to printing clinics that have a legal team member, how would you, or medical teams obviously as well, how would you encourage them to come to the next NIFLA Leadership Summit to provide, what resources does NIFLA offer towards the medical groups and the legal groups when it comes to ongoing training, educational credits? Like, what does that look like?
Well, yeah, you go to our website, nifla.org, of course, but we have 1,600 members nationwide, of which 1,300 are medical clinics, and we launched the medical clinic initiative about 25 years ago because we wanted centers to convert to medical, primarily so they could be using ultrasound confirmation of pregnancy with the abortion-minded women they see. But to do that, you got to do it right legally. And so we developed the program, we developed the training, we train centers on how to be medical, what the legal requirements are. We train medical personnel such as RNs on how to perform what's called limited obstetric ultrasound, and all the legalities in that. So that's a big part of what we do.
Awesome. I think that's a really good that'll be a really good piece to share with some executive directors.
Great.
So, thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
So Heather, does that look okay?
Hey, look how much taller he is than me. I got to stand on my. You bend and I stand. There we go.
I'll just do a little stride.